Until World Rugby is prepared to admit the difficulty of US growth, they won't make a dent in the American sports psyche, writes Martin Devlin in this week's Playing the Ball column. Martin, thanks for taking the time.
Hamish, good to see you as always, mate. Even though we lost on the weekend, and I know we're both suffering because of that.
So this is your victory speech, your victory column after a few weeks ago, is it? Were you sort of having another look at the US rugby issue?
Yeah, look, all I was doing was pointing out that, maybe I am right on this, and I know I'm 100% right on this, and I know that anyone who actually looks at what World Rugby is trying to do, taking the World Cup to the United States, which I said in my original column a few weeks ago is a really good idea, but until they get humble and until they, get over themselves and until they actually produce a plan that is practical and realistic and actually targets exactly where they want to go with the sport, the chances of rugby making any kind of impression in the United States are nil. And I say that with love in my heart because I genuinely hope that I'm wrong and that the game can get a foothold in the US. But, World Rugby, when they announced that they were taking the World Cups, men's and women's, to the United States, they did it with their big, usual bombastic chest-beating antics as though, this is somehow going to conquer United States sport. You've got to remember, as I said in the first column, that US rugby was bankrupt a couple of years ago. You've got 9 years to go till the Rugby World Cup. Where are you going to get the hundreds of millions of dollars that you need? And also Silver Lake with all their constant new revenue streams and market opportunities. Look, I think that my argument is probably couldn't have been better reinforced than over the weekend, where if you were from outer space or just a sports fan who hasn't watched a game of rugby before and we sat you down in front of those test matches, why would you bother watching another game? It is so confused as a sport these days. It's so convoluted. There's a card punishment system, which not even the best managers and coaches in international rugby understand what's going on, Hamish. Adi Sabir went off the field. Every single rugby fan on the planet who was watching was just, and even he was going, wow, what's going on here?
That first half took about an hour, didn't it? It was so long.
Yeah, no, there's, and the way that the game is played, the way that the game is officiated these days, it's just, why would you switch off the sports that you love and watch this sport? There's no decent reason to. And in the United States, you've got sports which are ingrained hundreds of years. They've been part of the community, and especially their full contact football sport of what we call gridiron or the NFL. It starts at school level, Haim. It's like first 15 rugby in Auckland or first 15 rugby wherever you are. There's something that you kind of hold on to for the most of your life if you've been involved in the first 15, as I know that you have. This is what college football is over there. And part of the reason that I wrote the column was that, World Rugby, what not a lot of people know is that their whole funding comes from running Rugby World Cups. That's where they get all their money from. And that money is then meant to actually be allocated and resourced towards things like the amateur game and women's rugby and the Pacific Island nations and things like that. So, there's a real financial cost here if this doesn't succeed in the United States. And to make it succeed in the United States, first and foremost, you've actually got to make an impression and get ESPN, which is the biggest sports producing, content producer in the United States and also the most watched sports television. You've got to somehow get them interested in what you're doing. And last weekend, not this weekend gone, but the one previous, the annual hot dog eating contest made the news. There's nothing about any of the finest rugby teams in the world playing. Israel Adesanya dominated the ESPN Sports app and their news. Now, I know that ESPN owns MMA and UFC, sure, but this is the whole point of what I'm saying. America is very Americentric when it comes to sport. They don't need other sports. If football, round ball football, can't make it there, well, you're not going to make it anywhere. I'm quoting a song here, of course. But, they tried in 1994, FIFA, to get the World Cup established. Sure, it works for the 6 weeks it's on, but after that, everyone goes back to what they're doing. So, rather than take my words as criticism, World Rugby, look at it from a fan who thinks that, hey, if you want to do this, you've actually seriously got to come up with a way of doing it and do it in a humble way. You're not just going to go there and throw it at them and expect them to like it. Well, they've got no reason to like it, Hamish. And so World Rugby need to wake up and actually think, okay, how do we connect? Actually, let's actually ask people over there how we connect, maybe, instead of telling them.
Because Rugby League tried this a few years ago as well, didn't they? Unsuccessfully.
The Denver test. And Rugby League was going to conquer America and establish itself on the West Coast. And can anyone even remember we played England in Denver? The worst national anthem that was ever sung. That's the only thing I remember about that. Our national anthem was just absolutely terrible. Look, it's not a criticism. It's just that, you can't just go around the world telling people what they want. you've got to offer a product and then actually somehow get them excited and get them to want it. And I just think the state of rugby at the moment is so confused. It's such a difficult game to watch. And trying to gain a financial foothold over there is really important for World Rugby to stage this Rugby World Cup. And at the moment, they've got no show. They've got about as much show as I have of coaching this week's All Blacks team against Ireland.
Martin, thanks very much for your time.